Pie! Popular pastry, tricky math thing, and now Sword of Righteousness. A masked avenger has been giving Springfield's scoundrels their just desserts.
This is for your show's slight decline in quality over the years.
Before the video starts, I recently got the opportunity to collab with CrowdMade on some merch for the channel. We got t-shirts, hats, more t-shirts. I'm really happy with how it all came out. If you want to consider supporting the channel, link's gonna be in the description.
Thanks for listening.
There are shows that have been going on for a while. Then there are shows that went on for a long while. Then there's The Simpsons, inching onto its 31st season with close to 700 episodes in total. And aside from a vast catalogue of characters and settings famous for some of the most memorable lines in television, of course there are other aspects to the show that got it to where it is now, but it's really the writing, thanks to what are now some of the most acclaimed television writers in all of television, that we remember the show for. It's the one constant even many newer episodes have to show for themselves, if to a lesser extent. Still, I'm sure anyone here has at least one Simpsons line they bring up every so often.
Ay, caramba!
But what makes the show so quotable and have such a strong understanding of its core characters? Well, today I want to try and answer that question and delve deeper into the writing behind The Simpsons. But I couldn't possibly solve this mystery alone. Can you?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I mean, it's my job, right? Hi, I'm Alan Denton. You may remember me from such YouTube animation criticism series as Stop Your Whining! A white guy explains why the Amazing Chan clan wasn't offensive, and Farewell to Son of Zorn. Thanks for all the laugh. Also, I was story editor on Sonic Boom, co-head writer for Sunny Day, and I've written freelance for Disney, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon.
That's right. From as far back as I remember, I've always been a massive fan of the show. It aired for around 2 hours every weekday, and I was there to watch all of it. But back then my thoughts on the show were very surface level. I recall enjoying the later seasons more than the first few, solely because they looked better. But as I got older and continued to watch each new season, there was something about the show that I'd once adored that just wasn't clicking with me anymore, and I couldn't tell why. So let's delve into the writing style of the so-called golden age of The Simpsons, around season 2 to 7, back when everything was coming up Simpsons, and see what was so perfect about them. The Simpsons had a huge writing staff, including such people as Sam Simon, Al Jean, John Swartzwelder, Conan O'Brien, Bill Oakley, etc, etc. Seriously, if I were to list everyone who wrote for the show, then we'd be here all day. They slept, they stole, they were rude to the artists, and they were the best writers the show had ever had. But something that stood out with the Simpsons writing staff is that even though each episode only credits a couple writers, it was a huge collaborative effort, between most of them for every episode, each giving their own ideas and input to ensure each scene is as perfect as it can be. Now I don't know how common that is with animated shows these days. If only I had a professional writer to ask. Oh, perfect! Alan, you don't happen to know any writers, do you?
Well, listen, before we go on about the show's staff, I think we need to first understand why it is that The Simpsons in particular is so lauded for its writing. What made this show so different from any other primetime comedy? And it's beyond basic things like, oh, there's so many great characters, or the stories have good twists, or Itchy and Scratchy comprise a dramaturgical dyad. I'm talking about how the jokes work structurally. More specifically, how they're so efficiently stacked on top of each other. Here, let me give you an example. The season 6 episode, Bart's Comet. Now, as far as I know, this isn't anybody's favorite episode of The Simpsons. It's kind of your general middle-of-the-pack episode from the show's golden years, which makes it a perfect example to showcase the kind of writing that The Simpsons was doing on the regular. I'm going to show you a clip, and as you watch it, make special note of a joke structure known as tagging. That's when you have a traditional setup and a punchline, like any other joke, but then as you finish, you tag with another joke on top of that. Essentially, you use the previous punchline as the setup to a new joke. It's a pretty efficient way of writing comedy, since now you can squeeze more jokes into a show this way, since the lines are now doing double duty, And the Simpsons room? Well, they were masterful at this. So at this point, Bart has this balloon that looks like Principal Skinner with a huge butt, and it's floating through the sky. Okay, so Skinner wants to get it down.
Whoever brings down that balloon doesn't have to learn fractions. Careful, children, that's my car.
Okay, so there's the main joke. It's directly related to the plot, right? Skinner wants the balloon down, kids throw rocks at it, but they're just hitting his car, making the situation even worse. Good, funny, on point. That's your setup and punchline. But then, the joke keeps going. So now Willie's getting in on the action, firing his shotgun around children. It's a slight escalation from throwing rocks at a car, but still on plot and a natural progression to the previous joke. But then things get a little more absurd. Okay, now all of a sudden, we're up with some fighter pilots who think Willie's an enemy plane? Okay, so you see right here, this has nothing to do with the plot because it's part of a joke chain. And this joke chain, for this moment, has taken over the show, and we are at its mercy, and we're going to follow it. So let's see where it goes.
Iraqis again, launching Sidewinder missile. Missed him.
Boom! Huge new laugh. And you never would have imagined that this punchline would have come from kids throwing rocks at a balloon gag. But each new moment escalated so naturally from the previous one that we never even really questioned it. You know, what a good tag. Okay, well, that was fun. So now it's time to return to the main story, right?
Launching second Sidewinder missile. This is what happens when you cut money out of the military and put it into healthcare.
Oh, okay. The same joke just happened again. I guess they tagged their tag of a tag with the same tag. Okay, I did not see that one coming. But okay, now it's time to get back to the story. You know, the balloon thing. All right, let's go.
It's a good program. Just give it a chance. That's all I ask.
Okay, I was wrong. As these two liberal and conservative strawmen fighter pilots engage in a literal fistfight, the tag session has come to an end. What was that, 7? 8 tags on the original joke? You know, the rock throwing thing? Honestly, I've lost count. You know, normally a runner that long and that far astray from the story would fatigue an audience. You know, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? With each joke logically leading into the next with a gradual incline of absurdity, people just kind of go along for the ride. And again, this was just a random example from a middle-of-the-pack episode of The Simpsons. Take it from me. As a professional writer, the amount of successful tagging that happens in every episode of The Simpsons is mind-blowing. It gets to a point where it's downright discouraging. I mean, like, I could never write like that. I can't even think on a level where I can swerve away from my story that many times and keep the jokes working. So how did The Simpsons do this? Honestly, by having a collaborative and competitive writer's room. I mean, when you're doing a run like that, most jokes don't come from the same writer. They come from different voices, each piling an extra gag on top of the previous joke. They're trying to one-up the other guy's closer, you know? And sure, lots of shows have writers' rooms. But on the whole, our industry's kind of moving away from this. I work a lot in kids animation, and most of those shows nowadays, they're written by freelancers, each working alone and emailing their script into a head writer. That head writer then also works alone to punch up said script before submitting it. It's a fine way to do business in that it saves a lot of money, but you just don't get those beautifully tagged jokes like you do in classic Simpsons episodes. That kind of magic only really happens in person, when you can get a genuine comedy pyramid going. It gets to a point where, if you watch TV enough, you can sort of tell which cartoons, at least comedy cartoons, have rooms and which don't. Usually by how much they tag their jokes and how effectively they do it. The second season of Sonic Boom, for example, we had a writer's room of 3. Myself, Greg Hahn, and showrunner, head writer Bill Freiberger, also a Simpsons guy. I think you can sort of see the tagging culture in that too, or at least I hope you can.
Each writer did a phenomenal job at seamlessly interjecting their own jokes and ideas, without the episodes feeling bloated or constantly having the writing style change between scenes, to the point where you can tell that someone else is writing it. This just goes to show how perfect a fit these writers were for each other. And even with all their nonsensical and outlandish ideas like bear taxes, whacking day, and the entirety of Homer's mysterious voyage, they still managed to keep the Simpsons family and all the residents of Springfield grounded in reality. But over the years, as the seasons went on, more and more writers started to leave the show, with only a small fraction of the initial writers remaining to this day. This unsurprisingly had a large effect on the show as a whole, and while at first the shift was gradual, looking back it's very noticeable as to when the people who made The Simpsons so great were no longer there. Something you'll quickly notice about the earlier seasons of the show compared to the modern era is that this is the Simpsons family. And this is a caricature of the Simpsons family. Despite being animated, every character feels like a real person, with feelings and emotions. We feel sympathetic when we see Homer work himself to death, so we can pet for Lisa's pony to gain her affection. We're concerned when we find out Homer is gonna die and we see how he'd spend his final moments with his family. We're happy for Bart when he finally passes his exam, with a solid D-. However, we don't care when we see Bart is about to jump off a water tower and kill himself, because literally every single character in the show hates him for not catching one single ball at a baseball game. Because this scenario is just so exaggerated and unrealistic that you can't even take it seriously.
I put on fresh makeup for this?
Even the somewhat lackluster movie got this right. Sure, the situation is outlandish, but the characters themselves stay grounded. These aren't just silly cartoons meant to only be used for gag after gag until they learn some ham-fisted moral. These are people. And the writers understood this, not using the characters for the sake of predictable one-note gags, such as Lisa is smart,
S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
or Homer is fat, but instead use the gags to build on their character and grow our bond with them. Homer's trampoline escapades aren't just funny because, haha, dumb fat man wants a trampoline. It's funny because we know Homer. We know he's the kind of person who would automatically assume a random car in the road also just so happens to want this random trampoline. But now Homer is turned into this lazy slob, who rarely comes off as if he cares about anyone but himself. He's now a mean-spirited parody, whose stupidity takes precedence over all his other character traits. Homer's turned into this egotistical maniac so gradually I didn't even notice. And it's not just the Simpsons family who have suffered under this. Even the secondary characters like Flanders have been so, well, Flanderized. Going from a Christian neighbour who tries his best to be kind to Homer despite the occasional outburst, to a Christian. Just a stupid, sexy Christian. This isn't just something exclusive to The Simpsons either. Shows like Family Guy, SpongeBob, South Park, all after a certain point felt like they were becoming more and more like a parody of themselves, with the characters being more defined by singular character traits. What I'm trying to say is that the groundedness, is that a word? Whatever, has been completely destroyed with the gags becoming more and more zany. But it's not like I blame them. Everything that could have ever been done with The Simpsons has been done long ago, but it doesn't excuse how lazy the writing is now. For example, remember how in the earlier seasons if they got a celebrity to cameo they would usually play a different character? Screw it. Making new characters is hard.
Thanks for the lift, Tony Hawk. I gotta go now, Tony Hawk. Cool guy, Tony Hawk.
Bart, you know Tony Hawk?
Catch you later, Tony Hawk!
To be fair, they dropped that fairly early on. But instead of getting them on for a quick gag that usually ended up poking fun at the celebrity, or killed them off one by one, now they focus entire episodes around the synopsis of, look who we got in our show. At least they're self-aware that the show has declined in quality.
What a way to treat the loyal fans who put up with so much nonsense from this franchise.
No, wait, that makes it worse. There are a ton of jokes in the modern season that can just be summed up as, yep, our show sure does suck now. Too bad we're not gonna do anything about it. By the way, have you met Lady Gaga? I didn't think that it was physically possible, but that episode both sucked and blew. Remember the Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show from season 8? It features the show within the show Itchy and Scratchy, becoming so desperate for ratings and ideas that they resorted to adding a new character, Poochie D, and he rocked the telly. He was half Joe Camel and a third Fonzarelli. He was a kung fu hippie from Gangsta City. He was a rapping surfer, and you're the fool he pitied. Throughout the episode, there are multiple jokes that alluded to the fact that the writers for The Simpsons were running out of ideas. And while yes, the jokes were funny then, that was 20 years ago. Nobody's laughing now. Literally. Now, if there's something I definitely don't want you to take away from this video is that the current Simpsons writers are some hack frauds who will deserve to be fired for these blunders. I really can't blame them for being so out of ideas. I highly doubt if their old writers stayed after all this time the show would still be as good as it once was. The Simpsons just isn't the kind of concept that should have lasted 30 plus years. They used to be with it, but then we changed what it was, and now what they're with isn't it.
I think Simpsons writer Mike Reiss maybe put it best in his book, Springfield Confidential, when he said, basically, that you should think of a TV show like a person, and think of an episode as like a year of that person's life. So most shows live to about like 60-something, but others kind of die tragically before they even reach 10. If a show makes it to 100, well, that's a big deal. This is to be celebrated. This is a rare achievement. So by that metric, The Simpsons are still alive at 660 years old. And you're mad that they don't look as cute as they did in their 30s? I guess what I'm saying is, there's been plenty of hot air expelled over questions like, when did The Simpsons start its decline? And what's the worst episode ever? When we really should be focusing on the fact that this show was so good, so masterfully funny for so long, that for like an entire generation, we kind of just took it for granted. So, sure, most of the episodes that air Sunday nights on Fox don't really hold a candle to what The Simpsons put out 25 years ago, but maybe that's okay? Like, if you ask me, I think we should just let the old gal enjoy her golden years in peace. You know, comfortably cashing those Social Security checks for as long as she can. I think she's earned it anyway.
Boy, The Simpsons sure does suck now.
Yeah. Sucks like a fox.
The new Simpsons seasons just ain't what they used to be.
Ain't what she used to be. Ain't what she used to be. Old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be.
What else is on?
Ain't...